three. Hi, welcome to this week's version, show number 9 of the Big Venture Zone. David Cohen with you. I'm your host, and the show is geared to young entrepreneurs and founders 20 to 35 to give them the strategies, the ideas, the confidence they need to move forward, and also tips, community, like a community to hang out in. We have a LinkedIn group for the Big Venture Zone. You can just look it up and make your request to join. And we've got resources that you need to succeed. And I'm really thrilled to have this week's guest with us is Erika Scott. Erika is the founder of a company called Jig Savvy, and she's expert at helping small business owners earn more without working more. I like that. She focuses on the real drivers of business, sales, marketing, operations, and AI, but keeps it all grounded in what actually matters. So how you communicate, how you treat people. Her work is built on the belief that respect and clarity aren't soft skills, they're what makes business run. Totally. And welcome to the Big Venture Zone, Erika. Good to have you with us today.
Great to be here, David.
So let's get the party started. You're big on teaching and working with clients on operations. Why is this a big thing for you? Why is it more important than most entrepreneurs give it or give our attention to, and the investment in working on our operational game plan? Why is this big for you, and why do a lot of entrepreneurs just sort of like, I'm not so interested in this?
Well, I think, David, a big part for most business owners, or at least many of the business owners that I talk to, is they start their business because they were really good at doing something, whether it was creative or with their hands or some other iteration of that. And they came into business by default. Everybody said you should go out on your own, or they were laid off, or they had a really bad day at work and they're like, I'm not going to go in, I can do this on my own. And so there was some trigger that made them go out on their own and start their own business. And in many cases, they hadn't really thought about it, they hadn't really planned on it. And what they don't understand is that running a business is a completely different set of skills than doing the thing. They never really understood that the businesses that they worked for did a whole bunch of stuff in the background that they didn't. You're not going to share that with all of your employees. They don't necessarily need to know. The guy selling the donuts doesn't need to know intimately what kind of yeast you buy, right? So they have a very skewed perspective, and all they see is the money coming in, and they don't really understand the back end. So starting off, it becomes a bit of a slog, and the operations is a piece that's either avoided, so they never really set it up properly, and then they're just swimming upstream trying to catch up, and it never really feels like you're getting there. But the sad part of that is a little bit of planning and a little bit of basic knowledge about how businesses run, but also the technology that we have available now that can really save you time, can take your business from cash flow is coming in and you're barely paying your bills to suddenly you've got extra money, you're finding extra time. And most of that comes down to planning and learning a little bit. You don't have to know everything, but you have to understand at least a little bit.
What I'm hearing a little bit reminds me of what Michael Gerber, author of the E-Myth, taught, and you said it right off the top. People get into their own business almost accidentally, or a layoff, or that's it. I've had it with this company. I'm going to go on my own, and you said at the top, but they're not giving any thought to how they're going to run this thing and what's involved. It's just like they're seeing the fun part of it, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm doing this, and but they're not organized, they're not setting up the business so, as Michael Gerber says, that the business can run on its own without you, which is really, to me, that's an ultimate goal. What are the 5 pillars that we need to know about in terms of operating our businesses in a more profound and more compelling way? What are maybe 5 things we need to look at, that we need to work on and manage so that the business runs well?
So I think the first thing to understand about your business is, although it impacts every element of your operations, who are you and your business? And what is it that you're doing for your customers? And I don't mean like, oh, I'm building a bench, but like, are you creating a special place for them to sit and relax, right? Like, what is it that your business is doing? Because ultimately, where you land on, say, the pricing scale, like if you are, fast and efficient and cheap, you're going to get in, you're going to get out, your quality might not be as high. But if you are, say, a high end, you're going to go in and you're going to be meticulous and you're going to be there for months and it's going to be the best thing ever, you're going to have to charge a lot. So you need to kind of know what it is that you're offering to your customers because that will ultimately drive everything else. So number one is knowing who it is that you are and what you're offering. Number two, I would say understanding the fundamentals of how you get money to come in. And so that's as simple as scope and estimates, making sure that you understand how to do that, understanding invoicing. I have some recommendation things that I recommend to people regarding invoicing. So how to do that stuff. And it seems really basic, like, oh, you estimate and you invoice. And it isn't complicated, but it's amazing the number of people who do that part wrong, and it ends up costing them a lot of money. So that would be definitely number two. Number three, I would say, is you can't be the guy behind the curtain, right? Like it's one thing if you're running a large business and you have an infrastructure of people who are selling for you, representing you. You can be the Oz. But if this is a business that's being run off of your skills, your knowledge, what you're bringing to the table, and even that, even if it's your oversight, but your vision and other people are performing the work, you can't be the guy behind the curtain. You need to make sure that you are comfortable representing your business every time you interact with other people. So if you're not speaking about your business with pride, then that really can limit where it is that you're going to go and also how people perceive your business. Number four, I mean, we didn't prepare this, so I'm making this up as I go
Oh, you're
along.
doing really well. I like these.
Uh, yeah, so number four, I would say uh, understanding marketing and advertising today. What does that really mean? Because AI has changed everything. It's made a lot of things easier, but it's also changed the way that people view advertising. And it also changes the way that you manage your advertising budget. And so that would be probably number four. And number five, when you are slow, when you are busy, actually, there's never a good time to stop advertising your business. So, and I don't mean like maybe you'll slow down paying for ads, but the reality is that with the ebbs and flows of the economy, you're going to have periods of feast and famine in most businesses. And so if you are the type of person, particularly if you take on large projects, when you're busy, even if you have the next one or two lined up, you want to make sure that you're still actively presenting your business to the world and establishing your name and your reputation. Because at any point in time, something could happen in the economy. Or if you're throwing all your eggs in one basket, one job goes away. And if you haven't established a reputation, then where are your next jobs going to be coming from? And so we saw this a lot when things happened with COVID, particularly in the construction industry, where people who had never had to advertise, in fact, they'd never even had to return voicemails or do other things. Suddenly, they don't have work, right? Everything switched and they went from turning work away and being chased to suddenly now they don't know where it's going to come from, and they didn't have any skills to do that, and nobody knew who they were because everything was all by referral. So I would say that when things are going well, it's still a good time to make sure, and it doesn't have to be big. It could be sponsoring a hole at a charity golf course or, tournament for, and so there are things that you can do that can keep your brand front of mind for people, and they see it, they recognize it over and over again, and then when they're ready or things change, they'll be reaching out to you. So those would probably be the five top things that I would, just off the top of my head, would be the things I would think of.
Right. Okay. Now, there's this document that we could create as entrepreneurs. I feel it's almost more important than a business plan, and that is working on an operational plan. What's your take on that? Like, I feel like an operational plan with metrics and actions and dividing the roles and responsibilities up into parts is more important than a business plan. What's your take on that, Erica?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. I definitely think that there's still a role for a one-page business plan or a vision. I mean, the idea that you're going to spend a ton of time and produce something that's going to be really thick and that's going to be representative. I think that I don't see the value in that unless you're working through yourself how you want your business to be. But definitely having an operations plan. I mean, for me, I think understanding technology before you start to make the leap is going to be really important. Planning that is going to be key. And I think what happens is that people look at the technology or the software that they're going to use as they need it. But then what happens is you have this over here and this over here, and the things don't talk to each other. And now you're paying extra money for third-party services, or you're manually doing stuff that you wouldn't have to do. So to your point at operationally, figuring out like if I create estimates, where are they going to go? Where are they going to sit? Is it going to sit in my accounting software? I'm going to send stuff straight from QuickBooks or some other software. Am I going to, do I want a CRM? And I honestly think people undervalue setting up a CRM at the beginning because it's an amazing way to leverage every interaction that you have. And people often think, oh, I don't really need something that's going to be that much. And I understand that tendency, but the reality is that where and how you store the information is going to be as important because if you don't collect the information, then when you need it, you don't have it. And garbage in, garbage out. Those two things regarding technology have not changed since the beginning of computers. So those are definitely having an operational plan where there's an emphasis on the technical back end. And you don't have to understand how it works, but talking to other people who are in your industry and finding out what they use and why they use it is going to be a really important part before you start randomly grabbing things. Because every time you transition, it's like moving houses, right? Like, oh, I'm going to rent here for a while, and then you have to set everything up. And then you're like, oh, I'm not going to stay here anymore. And then you move. And the process of moving is way more work than if you had just built the house to begin with.
Got it. Um, I like, an operations plan. I look at McDonald's as an example. Everybody in that unit knows what to do. They have a role, they have responsibilities, and they do it. They're not, the person taking your order isn't in back flipping burgers, right? So I feel like you need that structure to set up your company as to how it's all going to work. And how are you going to, what happens when a customer calls you or you meet them, or how do you get that customer to want to call you? That's your marketing. I'm going to dive into that next here. So I think you need to know, and for me personally, to have that structure on all components of the business so it all flows, because you could lose a customer. Tell me what your take is on this. You mentioned invoicing by not invoicing on time. If you wait in your, you know, uh, dragging your feet on invoicing and you say, I've got time, I'll invoice in a couple of months. And then your client gets that invoice, 60 days later, they're going to go, what's this? Right? What's your take on that? Like just having that sort of game plan for everything you do in your business.
Well, I definitely think that that's key. I mean, I'm gonna stand on my invoicing soapbox for a second, David, so I hope you'll indulge me a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, I am a firm believer that if you work in an environment where, particularly if changes are going to happen, and let's be honest, in almost every situation, things are going to change, that you invoice your customers every single week. And I know that that may be an unpopular opinion, but the reason why I recommend this is twofold. One, the invoice becomes less about a request for money and more of a communication tool. So you're using that to say to your customers each and every week, these are the extras, these are what we talked about, and you have a way to track all of those things as they go along. Now, I'm not saying that they need to pay the invoice every week. I mean, how they pay them, that maybe they pay once a month, but you still send them an invoice. And then the weeks where there's no changes and there's no updates, you send them a zero invoice. And then they're going to be thrilled. They're going to say, great, we're on, like I didn't have anything. And that gives you it's a communication tool. Every time you send an invoice, it's going to be a lot less scary because it's not going to be massive. Your cash flow is going to be better if they're paying you regularly. But also, if the customer then says, oh, wow, that seems like it's been a lot, you now literally can just go back to your accounting software and print off a statement that outlines each and every single one of the invoices. So it's $800, $1,200, $0. And so then they see how they got to $10,000 worth of upgrades, but it's never a surprise. And the way you position it to your customers is, I do this because it's going to also be better for you. This is going to be a communication tool. You're going to know if you're getting off budget. You're going to, anything that we've talked about that's extra, as soon as it happens, you're going to know what it costs you. And so now we're talking about money in a way that is non-confrontational and better for them. And the truth is that many of your customers are going to find the ability to e-transfer you $300 is going to be a lot easier for them than to have to go and transfer money and then pay you $30,000,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there's a huge number of benefits for that. And again, you can negotiate with somebody and have a threshold where you say, if it's less than $2,000, just hold on to it until the following week. I don't expect you to pay. All of that then is still conversations about money and making it more comfortable. So definitely having those processes, but yeah, I mean, I cannot think of a situation where invoicing the customer every week is going to be a bad thing, particularly if you're in an environment where there are going to be changes.
Okay. We're with Erika Scott. She's owner and founder of Jig Savvy. One of the pillars, and I mentioned this already a little bit, Erika, is one of the pillars of the operational side of things is marketing, right? And I know you've shared a lot already. What are some key strategies and tactics that we need to put into our marketing game plan?
I think at the end of the day, random is never going to be the thing. There used to be, the statistic used to be that there were 7 imprints of your business before somebody remembered you. And I think that's now over 20. So if you think about that, if you're investing a huge amount of money in one splash radio promo or one ad, and I know that's advertising and not necessarily marketing, but if everything that you're doing is like, I'm just throwing things out there, then people aren't creating that repeatability that's necessary for them to know who you are. So, from a marketing standpoint, you need to be very clear. I mean, you asked me in terms of pillars for your business, you need pillars for your marketing.
Hmm.
Who, maybe you have five areas and you focus, and you might have the odd thing that goes outside of that because of a demographic. But the truth is, you're never going to it's never going to be a fit for everyone. And so you need to really dial into who is it that you're marketing to. If you think that the people who like your business the most are going to be women between the ages of 65 and 70, then you market to those people. And if women who are 45 like it too, that's okay. But you trying to nail it in so that people feel a connection with you and your business is going to be at the heart of everything that you're doing, all of your marketing messages, everything that you're putting out there. So definitely, I would say that that's the case. Knowing what your pillars are and knowing who your audience is.
So what do we want our marketing to do exactly? I remember reading a book called Your Marketing Sucks by a guy named, I think Mark Evans. And he's suggested in his book that you want your marketing to at least pay for itself and even earn money on top of it, right? To get results.
Mhm.
What's your take? What would you want, what do we want our marketing to do for us?
Well, I think in today's day and like the reality is that we have advertising channels available to us that weren't available before, and they
Mm,
are free. And I'm going to use air quotes on that because your time is money. So nothing is ever really
yeah.
free because you're investing your time and energy in that depending upon your business, but in many cases, the marketing, yes, it's great if the specific advertising brings somebody through the door, but the marketing is going to lay the basis for who you are and what you're doing. And so it's going to, like, whenever people interact with your business, whether it's through your website or through your social media or even via email, that marketing is going to be like it's an encapsulation of your branding. They're going to know who you are, right? Like when people say Nike, yeah, they do shoes and all sorts of other things, but you have through all of the years of having it put out there, right off the hop, they are an athletic brand of equipment, right? And so the advertising specifically is going to be like this product, this event, this thing, but the marketing is going to be a very solid who we are and what we do. And I think that that's really important to not focus on the bits and the pieces, but to really keep that solid. So when people do hear your name, they have a very clear idea.
So yeah, that's you're vying for a clear positioning in the minds of your customers and prospects. That
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
All right. Now I want to yeah, move to a different aspect of marketing, and that's something you do really well. You believe in bringing the human side to those you're marketing to. Tell us like why that works and what's a crazy thing you've done. I know you have some fun pictures of yourself making funny faces. So you're not only building your brand, but you're building sort of like that. You're not like all business. You're having fun and you're engaging. Well, why do you feel that that works? And can you share maybe an outcome of putting that human side to things?
Well, I mean, it's not going to work for every business. I mean, again, if your market is very wealthy bankers, that's not going to be
No.
your approach. In
Well,
my particular case, my goal was to make it so that learning about business wasn't nearly as scary.
mhm.
And I have to also be very aware. I'm a woman, and if I put on a suit, I can be seen as being intimidating. And so, in order to make sure that the whole point of my marketing is to take business things and to relate it to stuff that other people already know, but also it doesn't have to be scary, right? And so that's an approach that I've taken because of the demographic that I've picked, who I am as a person, and all of those things. But the reality is that if you are a very formal person and you like to speak formally and you like to do formal things and your and that works for you, then it's really less about it's more about authenticity because now people are barraged with AI this and I personally have this thing the AI ick. The moment I see a video or something that is clearly AI generated, I think less of the company who has produced it. So the thing is it's a tool, right? So it's like if you're building a vanity, you're a custom cabinetry maker, and then somebody finds out that you've just bought the cabinetry from the Home Depot and stuck it on the wall, and they were expecting that you built it yourself, they're going to be a little bit disappointed about it. And
Mhm.
I feel like the AI produced content loses the humanity, and most of those business relationships that are really successful in the long term are about there being a fit between the client and the company. And so if you're always true to who you are and who your business is, and that is regular and consistent, then people can trust that. And that's really what it comes down to is authenticity and trust because, perfect glossy has been done, right? And if that's not really you and it's clear that that's happening, and then the disconnect if people see one thing and then they meet you and you're something else, they don't know who you are. They don't trust you anymore. And so that for me, the way that I present myself is because that is authentically who I am and what I believe. So that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I like that. And you're right, authenticity. People learn from you. They learn from maybe your mistakes. They learn from your past and how you move through something. So the authenticity to me is a great teacher, number one. And number two, I feel like when you're authentic, like I've seen some of your pictures, it's like, I want to work with you because this person looks, interesting, fun, and different, So yeah, I like what you're saying there for sure. Um, Again, in terms of one of the key aspects of our operations, we talked about marketing a little bit, but sales is a key aspect. How do we get a customer? What do we do when they come in? What do we ask them? How do we structure a proposal? That kind of thing. So in terms of sales, Erica, and by the way, we're with Erika Scott, owner of Jig Savvy, and she's teaching, marketing, consulting, coaching. So in terms of sales, what is the difference between marketing and sales? Because they're two very unique functions in a business.
I mean, I think in the terms of like marketing is sort of establishing your reputation. Whereas sales is going to be a specific offer or engagement where somebody's going to pay you for that thing or that time. And a lot of times, when people feel very strongly about their craft, the sales part is the element that is the trickiest. People tend to be humble. They don't want to brag too much. There's a perception of like a sleazy car salesman or any of that. And so the truth is that for sales, when I was selling houses, I didn't think of it as selling houses. I mean, technically that's what I was doing, but my job was to find a fit when people came in the door. And so the goal was to work with the customers to see if the product that I was selling was a fit for them. And if it was, to lean into those things because maybe they have some pain points. And in that case, so the example would be I was selling pre-construction condominium townhouses, which is very specific. But there are people where they're not ready to go into an apartment, but they're tired of taking care of the lawn and shoveling the driveway, or they want to travel. And so for a specific demographic, this was a really good point. So finding out what the customer's needs were and then trying to figure out what, and if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. Trying to force it is not going to make it work. But what I found would happen is sometimes it wasn't a fit for the person I was talking to, but then a couple of weeks later, I would have somebody else come in and they would say, "Hey, my friend so and so was here a couple of weeks ago and they told me to come and talk to you." So they had a very clear vision of what I was offering it. It wasn't for them, but they sent people in the door. And so that's really that interaction about the product is really the sales element. But if you're not thinking it as I'm selling it to you to get your money, but I'm trying to see if you're a fit for what I'm offering, then it feels a little bit less sketchy. And if you're willing to let people where it's not a fit walk away, then that actually serves you a lot better in the long run.
Yeah, because it's about long-term relationships. You want that person
Absolutely.
coming. Maybe in 5 years things change for them. The
Absolutely.
dynamic changed, or the need changed, or what concern them then has changed. So I like your approach, to really uncover the needs and provide ideas and solutions. And if it's not a fit, then somebody else will be.
Well, and I mean, to be a little bit more sharkish about it, if you're doing advertising, if you're doing a sales post on Instagram, you're going to find the pain point and you're going to pick at it, right? Like that's actually also a very successful way for people to get connected because you're like, I see your pain point, I have a solution, you're going to come and buy this thing from me. I mean, it's a legitimate advertising strategy as well. But if you're looking at it really just from a people perspective, and again, it's to take away that ickiness of selling, but it's a lot easier. But it's a legitimate technique too.
Yeah, talk to the challenge. Here's what we
Absolutely.
do. Here's how we solve your problem.
Yeah.
Tony Robbins talks about people buy and do things to avoid pain or get pleasure. And if you understand that, then you can position your company and your marketing and your sales strategy in line with those two elements.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
you mentioned that your clients back, 5, 6 years ago, had to, change and start marketing and advertising when COVID kind of changed the world. I'm laughing, but it's no laughing matter. But what was one of the best sales strategy you saw back then with a client that you were working with? Like, what did they do to start to, raise awareness and have business come in during that time? Do you recall
In the case of, say, subcontractors, the ones that made it, and the truth is a lot didn't. A lot ended up folding in and working for other companies, or they went and did other things. So, for a lot, it didn't work out. But for the ones where it did, they had already been doing the basic things. They had already been returning phone calls, right? Because every lead was a legitimate job. And so being respectful, open, making sure that they were good at communication, those were the ones that kind of started lifting through. And then they would proactively reach out to their existing networks and let them know, oh, you know how I was really busy before, but now I have more space. And so really it was about not burning any bridges. They hadn't really been burning bridges, but they hadn't been great at it. So being better at it and also reaching out and utilizing the networks that they had established. So, but I do know a lot of guys, they just didn't make it.
Hmm. I think
So,
it would have been important maybe to reach out and say, hey, I know things are challenging right now. How can we help you? Is there some other way that we can assist? And I know a couple of companies that I work with, and they would do these reach out calls and or outreach calls and check in. What do you need? How can we help? You know?
Well, and that's a huge thing, right? The willingness to ask people for
For
help. I
help,
mean, I
yeah.
wasn't in this business at that time. I mean, I was working for a builder. So I've only been in the consulting space for a couple of years. So, wasn't really in my wheelhouse to be reaching out, but at the end of the day, when things change or when you're getting started, making the phone call and risking rejection is the thing you have to do, and you're going to get better at it, right? I mean, this is somewhat unrelated, but sort of related. Years ago, was asked to do a project where the not-for-profit I worked for was not able to collect money. They had invoiced all their members and they weren't collecting any money. And they're like, we don't know what's going on. We need hundreds of thousands of dollars to continue to do our work. And so they said, hey, can you up in Canada take a look at this? And so it fell on my desk and I took a look at it. Turned out they made two critical mistakes. One, their invoice didn't look like an invoice, so people didn't even know that they were expected to pay them. And two, they were sending it to the wrong person. So I picked up the phone and I called. And it was really tough because I'm thinking in my mind, I'm doing collections calls. But I would pick up the phone and say, "Hey, this is Erica. I'm, from this organization and we're doing this thing and I'm just wondering who I should talk to, like if it's going to the right person." And so just opening it up, not even like not starting with the money bit, but starting with to your point, the connecting bit, the am I talking to the right person? How can I help you? And we are in this together. And so we ended up being able to collect about $300,000 in about a month, which was pretty
Yeah,
significant.
I would say.
Um, and when they were thanking me at the next big event, they referred to me as the Black Widow Spider because they thought that I had done all of these really angry collections calls. And I'm like, no, I literally called and clarified the information, uh, answered people's questions, and the next thing you know, they were paying. So sometimes the calls that you think are going to be really difficult, if you're positioning it not by starting saying, I need this from you, or it's going to be confrontational, but starting off the conversation with the frame of mind of where are we at? How are things going? To your point, you can get where you want to go without it being nearly as bad as you think it's going to be. Don't get me wrong. There were some people who are like, I'm not going to pay that. But once I'd made 100 calls, it didn't really matter. So
Yeah, you were ready for whatever.
I was ready, and I'd had enough successes that the negatives were nothing.
Yeah.
So
So we're going to close off our chat today. This has been great, by the way, Erica. And in terms of AI, how can AI help us have more ease in our business? That's one question. And the other question is, how do we know what AI tool to use that's going to help us be more profitable, save time, save money, things like that? So those are two big questions.
yeah, so I'm going to say that you need to look at AI like any other tool. If I, again, I'm very familiar with construction, so many of my analogies come from there. But if I'm building something, I'm not going to start with the most expensive, fanciest saw, right? I'm going to start with a basic saw. And maybe I'm going to ask other people who are in the business, if I only had one saw, what saw would I need? Right? And so you're going to start there. So you start with your chat GPTs and your perplexity because once you get familiar with how it works and what the tools are good for, then the other tools will make sense. But trying to jump into like having a whole collection of things that do all sorts of different things is going to be it's simply going to be overwhelming and
Mhm.
you're not going to be using the right tools for the right things because you're not going to be thinking about them. So you want to start small and you want to start with those things that you know how to do. But the key with AI, in my experience, and the truth is, I use it all the time for all sorts of things, It is iterative. And the more you prepare and the more you are back and forth about it, the better your product is going to be. So again, it's like if I'm doing crown molding and I just cut it and stick it up, it's not going to be good, right? So I'm going to cut, I might rough cut it and then sort of see how close I am. And then I'm going to take off a little bit. And then I'm going to look at it. And is it right? No. Okay, I'm going to take off a little bit more. And so it's going to be that process, but I'm the one that's going to determine how good is this result going to be or how bad is this result going to be. But if I just put it up, go, oh, it doesn't fit, and then I come back and then I just hack off another chunk, it's going to be terrible, right? It's going to be terrible. So there's a finesse that goes along with using AI in any capacity that's iterative, but also understanding it's a tool. So, for example, my hacksaw or my chainsaw is not going to do the same things as my jigsaw. One is going to be great for this thing, and one is going to be great for something else. But if I start trying to take down trees with my jigsaw, that is going to not work very well. And if I try to use my chainsaw to cut a board, it's not going to work out very well. And the same applies for AI. They're built, the best AIs are going to be very specific for very specific tasks. And if you try to use them for other things, they're just not going to work very well. So you're probably not the problem, but just take a breath and start at the beginning and get really good with one, and then you can add something else.
So what are like your top three helpful AI tools that we need to maybe keep in mind? And what do these do to help us succeed?
So, um, I mean, the reality is that AI is in everything. But in terms of the ones that I proactively go in and I'm thinking in my head, I'm going to use AI for this, I use your basic large language models. I use ChatGPT. I have a pro version of that. There's definitely advantages that come along with using a pro version.
Yeah.
And I also use a space called Perplexity that gives me access to the other large language models like Claude and Gemini and whatever, because each of those models is going to be better for different things. So the advantage with the reason I use different tools is one, sometimes if I want an opinion on something, so I'm just going to use, so I've recently written a book, I'm going to just use that as an example. In
Okay.
the process of doing that, sometimes I'm like, are there areas in this book that don't match my voice? Right. And so it can scan 300 pages, go through and kind of pull out and say, yeah, this chapter doesn't really align with the rest of your voice, which is a huge time saver because now I don't have to go through and take a look at it. Um, and then just for this, I'll plunk it into something else because it's got different training. So it's going to go. So it's almost like getting different perspectives from different people. So I'll do this, run the same exercise through different tools, but also playing around with, Chat now has plugins for Canva, which is terrible, by the way. I'm sure it'll get better, and they are getting better, but you have to play around with it, right? And also understand that just because you get this in one area doesn't mean you're going to get it in something else. But also because the models lie to you, being able to cross-reference. So I don't use data that comes out of that. I'll just be very clear about it. What I do is I'll have it generate tables for me. I was researching something. I have access to some professional logins through some sites. They're in Perplexity, there's a computer function. So giving it my login information, it was able to go into all of those things, cross-reference all of the information, and put together a spreadsheet that had 50 agents that matched with my book. But I didn't stop there. I asked it to give me the links to the agents' bios and links to the agents' information in these different websites. And so when the only research I had to do was to go into the spreadsheet, click on the links, then I could review the information myself, but also it was all in one place. So what would have taken me weeks, literally, I set up the criteria and it took a few hours. And again, I went and then I thought, oh no, I also want this. And so I added something else in. And so again, it was iterative. I went back and forth and back and forth, and I turned what would have been weeks of research into maybe a half day of back and forth to create a very substantial evaluation of agents that match this book that I wrote, which is exceptionally powerful. So the information is there, but you start small, you do it a little bit, and also you have to keep in mind too, you don't want to feed any confidential information into any AI structure that doesn't have security around it. So just that's a little heads up.
All right. Um, yeah, I kind of like ChatGPT is like going to your family doctor, and then they, might assign you to a another tool, and that would be like going to your specialist, you know. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Erica, I want to thank you for this today. Tell me and tell our listeners, what do you have going on that our listeners need to know about?
Well, to be honest, David, I have been focused on people in construction for a long time, and I am undergoing a shift in my business towards doing workshops and training for women. My focus really is on women who have, high functioning women that have made themselves a little bit less through life and other obligations, and really about being able to reclaim yourself. So some of that's work-life balance, some of it's simply just remembering who you were, but a lot of it is about helping women reclaim the joy that they should have in their life.
Yeah, and we're not having a lot of joy these days, unfortunately. I think we need more. So I like
Well,
what
for
you said.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is great. I'm so glad we got a chance to do this today. I want to thank you so much. That was the fabulous Erika Scott. She joined us from her home office in the Muskokas. Next week, we're going to talk with Roger Pierce, author of the new book, The Unsure Entrepreneur. So I'm your host, David Cohen. This has been the Big Venture Zone. Like us on YouTube, share it, comment, and I want to thank you all for listening and being with us today. This was great. And Erica, what a joy having you with us today.
Oh, thank you so much, David.
It's been a pleasure. We'll see you next week. Have a good week, everyone.